The gaming market is a very competitive landscape. Developers work very hard on a project they are passionate about, putting many hours into it. They hope to achieve success through working on their project and then eventually sharing it with the world. AAA games see this especially within the more competitive seasons like in the fall. The indie game market is a bit different and in some ways a bit harder. New indies are released every day, and with that, the competition is high and it's even harder to stand out from the crowd. There are many small developers that welcome that challenge and succeed in that market. Supergiant Games is one of those companies. Supergiant Games has made 3 titles, and each one of them has been a hit, and each one tries something different within its genre. They are not ones to play it safe and continually release sequels for their first or second hit. This has been a studio that succeeds in the industry and continues to take risks and innovate. With this, I want to focus on discussing their first game they released. Bastion was Supergiant's first attempt at the action RPG genre. Join me as we take a look back at the game's development and then the game itself. I present to you a look back at Bastion.
I dig my hole, you build a wall. I dig my hole, you build a wall. One day that wall is gonna fall. Gonna build that city on a hill. That city on a hill. Someday those tears are gonna spill.
Supergiant Games was founded in September 2009, and it consisted of a 7-person team. Before they formed Supergiant, these developers had been working on big names within the industry. They worked on games such as Command & Conquer 3, Red Alert 3, and Call of Duty Modern Warfare 1 and 2. The studio was inspired by the independent game market at the time, where other studios were making great and personal games. This inspiration was the spark that made them want to quit their current positions and then take that risk and challenge with creating their own original game. The members that would form Supergiant Games quit their jobs to start development on Bastion. The aim was to make Bastion an action RPG. Very early builds of the game showed that it played from an isometric perspective, which would carry over into the final product. The story started with a boy waking up to his home and family dying in front of him. The opening, along with the game, carried a grim tone. After they had this base, the team began working on creating an art style that is both unique and attention-grabbing. This is where the game found its vibrant art style, which contrasted well with the grim tone of the story. The young studio made an interesting decision based on storytelling. Bastion utilizes a narrator throughout the entire journey. The developers wanted to tell a story, but they didn't want the story to interrupt the flow of gameplay. They wanted something that would coexist within the gameplay. Using the narrator allowed the developers to provide more depth to the actions of the player, as the narrator would essentially react to the player's actions. The team had access to a voice actor because they were longtime friends with voice actor Logan Cunningham. They did test the game without the narration, and it felt like the game was missing part of its identity. The studio had a series of rules relating to writing their game. They found their narrator, but they found it important to not have the narrator repeat any of his lines throughout the playthrough. The team felt like repeated lines can kill the momentum of a game, so they said the game would not have any repeated lines unless the player chose to replay the game. Another rule was to reward the player when they experimented. If the player uses a certain weapon combination or finds a hidden area, the narrator would comment, and the goal was to create this personal relationship between the player and the narrator. It was important for the developers to have the narrator be short with his responses. They did not want him to have long-winded or speeches that would carry on. The short responses allowed the narrator to come off as more reactionary in nature. There's a distinction that should be clarified here. The narration isn't your typical narration that you would find in, say, a film. The narration does not spoon-feed the player with obvious information, but rather it provides more context and story-focused information and creates a narration that deepens the actions taken by the player. An interesting aspect of Bastion's development is how the team did not want players to rely on a map within their game. They felt like the maps could be cumbersome, along with them potentially breaking immersion, and they wanted to succeed in having their game be immersive. So they had an interesting idea of having the land form around the player as they would move in that direction. A player could potentially see an area or item that might increase their want to go find and grab that item or see if a secret path could be discovered. And if there was another path there, then it would populate as the player started to approach that area, and then the ground would start filling in around them. This wasn't just aesthetically pleasing, but it did successfully help to create an environment where going off the main path is rewarded, while also being player initiated. Since there wasn't a map to indicate an unseen area, this was all done through the player moving about the environment. It is a testament to how well done this was. I played the game many times, and I never made the connection to needing a potential minimap and how the levels would just populate around you. And maybe that was the point. I never felt like I needed a minimap because of how the levels were constructed. I'm sure this took time and effort to execute this, but when playing the game, Supergiant made it look natural and easy. Something that the studio has stood by is not taking money from publishers for the development of their games and not selling their intellectual properties to publishers. While Warner Bros. Games was used as a publisher, the team did not take any money related to developing their game. They wanted to retain and keep that creative control over their games. As a result, Supergiant needed to find alternative ways to cut costs. A large portion of the narration was recorded in a closet rather than a more ideal location. The development team faced many challenges as they worked to complete Bastion. On July 20th, 2011, after 2 years in development, Bastion was released to the world.
Proper story is supposed to start at the beginning. Ain't so simple with this one. Now here's a kid whose whole world got all twisted, leaving him stranded on a rock in the sky. He gets up, sets off for the Bastion, where everyone agreed to go in case of trouble. Ground forms up under his feet as it pointing the way. He don't stop to wonder why. Finds his lifelong friend just lying in the road. Well, it's a touching reunion.
The story starts out after an event known as the Calamity has pulled apart the area. These fractured areas are now floating, and many of the people caught in the event were killed. The main character, known as the Kid, wakes up and makes his way to the Bastion. If something bad happened, everyone was supposed to meet up there. The Kid fights a few monsters and then successfully arrives at the Bastion. At the Bastion, the Kid meets an elderly man who provides the consistent narration for the story.
All I tell him is to set that core of his on the monument there, then watch. Just like that, the Bastion comes alive. Starts growing again, growing stronger. Kid's gotta put its power to good use. Now the Bastion can send him even farther into the wild unknown.
The Kid is instructed to collect cores to help power the Bastion and improve it. The Kid successfully journeys to new areas, battling foes, acquiring new weapons and equipment to aid him on his quest. Along the way, he meets two other characters, Zulf and Zia. After collecting more crystals, the group is betrayed by Zulf.
See, Zulf and I were just wrapping up a heated discussion. Zulf can barely muster the words. The Calamity failed, he says, but I will not.
The Bastion is damaged by Zulf, and then he flees the Bastion. We later learn that the Calamity was caused by Zia's father sabotaging the weapon that was meant to destroy a group of people known as the Ura. Zia, her father, and Zulf are all Ura. The Kid aims to undo the damage that Zulf caused to the Bastion. The Kid sets out to collect these shards to help repair the Bastion. While he is collecting shards, the Bastion is attacked by the Ura, and the group bands together to stop the attack. The group is successful, but more shards are still needed. As the Kid is collecting shards, it leads him to the Ura homeland. He finds Zulf, and the Ura people blame Zulf for bringing the Kid there. As the player, you can choose to save Zulf or leave him there to die. Following these events, the Kid and the player has a major choice to make. The Kid can use the Bastion to rewind time to the point before the Calamity happened, or the kid can use the Bastion as a means to take many of the current survivors and find a new safe place to live. They also don't know if rewinding time will prevent the calamity, but the ultimate decision is up to the player. The interesting aspect within the final choice is how that decision can potentially make you think about your New Game Plus playthrough. In a way, you can think of New Game Plus as deciding to rewind time before the calamity, but then the calamity eventually happens since you're in New Game Plus. It's almost like the decision fuels that New Game Plus option. While I like the story and how different the game is, especially in its approach to its world, but what I really think brings this world to life is the voice actor and narrator. This is a gimmick that does not feel gimmicky, but rather a great and unique implementation in conveying the story. His voice here is just very distinct.
Now, sit tight. It'll be over soon. No matter what happens next, you're done good. I suppose all that's left is to try and remember this moment.
He always has something to say, depending on what you're doing. If you acquire a new weapon or even a new piece of equipment, especially when pairing them together or having different combinations, he'll comment on them individually. He will even make a remark related to you falling off the map or dying within combat. With a lesser writer and voice actor, this could have turned out to being something that was annoying to the player, but that's not the case here. I could not imagine another voice actor in this role. But he should not receive all the credit, as this is a great pairing between the writer and the voice actor. His comments and remarks allow the player to continually receive information on specific items, enemies, and the world itself. This allows the player to always be within the narrative and always receiving new information. There's a weight to his delivery that even before it is revealed that he's a character within the game, you can tell by how he delivers his lines that he is an experienced person that's seen a lot of the world. His voice and delivery grounds the world and helps us solidify it as a place rather than just as a gaming space. His acting shows that the world didn't just start existing when you booted up the game, but rather it has a history and he's seen a lot of it. The player controls the kid, and your mission is to restore the Bastion. Throughout your journey, you'll battle many different enemies and have many different weapons to help you with that. The game continually throws new weapons at the player, and the weapons have their own ins and outs. But when you acquire a new weapon, you are forced to use it in one of your 2 weapon slots. This may seem annoying at first, but what the game is doing is it's forcing you out of your comfort zone and creating a space where you can try out a new weapon. This significantly helps the pacing of the game because you always have something new to play with. And since you can carry 2 different weapons at a time, the weapon combinations only continue to grow as you progress. The new weapons continue to be provided until the final minutes of the game. You'll use a hammer, a sword, dual pistols, a shotgun, a carbine, and a flamethrower, along with many others, with having access to different special moves. You can spin around in a circle with the flamethrower, hitting everyone that you can within close range. You can use mines, decoys, grenades, and many others. The weapons do operate differently from each other. The sword is good for quick slashes and can be thrown at enemies to hit them from far away. The flamethrower is deadly at close range, but you'll need to wait for it to recharge to be able to hit them again. The carbine does a lot of damage, but you'll need to wait for the kid to be able to aim at his target before you can fire. The game consistently flirts with providing new weapons, allowing you to get comfortable and confident with it. And then, right as you have a new combination down, the game likes to throw another weapon at you, and now you're forced to learn something new. As an added bonus, you can access your arsenal to change up your weapons and change the different combinations, even if the new weapon isn't your cup of tea. The combination and weapon variety provides different choices, and this means that there isn't a bad weapon in the game, but just different ways to use them. Combat is satisfying whether you're firing from far away or using something at close range.
Can't blame them for wanting it, though. So many of those sorry things hold up inside that old fort.
While you have many ways to attack, you also have a few ways to defend. You have a dodge roll that can give you some nice room between you and a group of enemies. The shield is useful in that now you can defend against attacks, but you can also deflect projectiles back at their attackers. And deflecting is really fun, especially once you get the timing down, and being able to hit that projectile back at an enemy is very satisfying. New weapons are not the only forms of progression that you'll be seeing either. As you continue to restore the Bastion, you'll gain the ability to upgrade your weapons, and each weapon has 2 skill trees to choose from. This gives you some options and personality that you can put into the weapons themselves. Defeated enemies will net you with experience points and help you level up. You will have slots that you can use to then be able to slot in different passive buffs to help out your character, and you earn more of these as you level up. Modifiers can be turned on and off whether you want to have a more challenging combat experience within the game. But the trade-off is that if you make the game harder, you're going to be giving yourself more opportunity to get more rewards. While the game does push you towards the main quest line, there are challenge stages for each of the new weapons that you've earned, and then through those you can earn more rewards. And there's an endurance mode that gives you flashbacks and more context within the story while fighting waves of different enemies.
He never knew his old man, but he had his mama to take care of. Frail thing with pure white hair like his.
Bastion delivers on the gameplay front in that you have so many options available to you, but it never feels overwhelming. Experimenting with new weapons is thrusted upon the player, and this helps to keep the game continually engaging by allowing you to learn new ins and outs with new weapons. Evading, dodging, and attacking all feel really smooth and responsive. The gameplay shines, just like the rest of the experience. Before we conclude this video, I need to give a brief mention to the music in this game. I'm not very technical when it comes to the music, but I know when my ears are happy, and this game has one of the best soundtracks I've heard in this medium. I enjoyed almost every track provided. I really love some of the Western style themes that they use, and in honor of this soundtrack, here are a few tracks from the game. Bastion is a great success story about a small group of people that wanted to create a brand new game that was both special and personal. They succeeded in providing an indie experience that arguably could rival AAA games. Bastion grabs your attention with its vibrant visuals and familiar look to its combat. But once you play it, you can see that it has its own unique ins and outs and provides a memorable action RPG. Bastion's pacing excels as the game never stops to deliver long-winded story moments, but provides that stuff on the fly and provides reactionary dialogue that both creates this personal relationship with the narrator and the player. Bastion offers great variety in its combat by continually providing new weapons to play with along with new weapons to use them upon. The game is just long enough to feel satisfying while being short enough to really feel that itch of wishing this game was longer. And I think that's the perfect way to end it. Bastion leaves you satisfied while making you want more. This isn't just a story of a great game, but rather a group of people that formed a company to work on something they wanted to do. They used the skills that they had acquired throughout their career to form a brand new company to create games that they were passionate about, and they succeeded.
I dig my hole, you build a wall. Gonna build that city on a hill.